Thank you guys so much for that warm welcome. That was very appreciated. As I confessed to these two over dinner, I've never actually moderated a panel before, so I was a little nervous for tonight, but we're all really, really excited, right?
You're killing it already.
We got to hang out for the past 2 hours at dinner, so we already know each other pretty well.
I feel these chairs make me nervous. Like, I feel like if I settle too far back.
Forward.
I know.
Far back.
Well, because like if something happens, I won't be able to defend us. From back here. I also can't write with my back to an access point. Like, what if someone attacks me?
What if someone attacks you?
And I'm like in the zone. I'd never see it coming.
That would be a crazy chapter.
I'm gonna think of this next time I write now.
Yeah.
Are you making me feel like I have to
doors?
lean forward?
This is what happens when you write books with too many morally gray characters in it, guys.
You gotta think about these things.
So I was gonna start off, obviously we just all had our bios read, but I was gonna start off if you guys wouldn't mind introducing just kind of yourselves, your books, most recent title, maybe what you're working on now. What's new with you?
All right. I'm Olivie Blake. I've written some stuff. Januaries is my collection of stories. It was written over the past, 8 years, I think. So it's my Eras tour, if you will. It's a book of, bedtime stories for adults. There's a real fairy tale vibe to it. It opens with quite a sweet story, but you should know that's not the only tone. And then next year I have 2 books coming out, Gifted and Talented, which is like Succession but with magic, and Girl Dinner, which is my satire about a cannibal sorority. You're welcome.
Remind me, what sorority were you in again?
I will not be telling you. I feel like people who are in my sorority are gonna know, though. I'm trying to think of ways to make it clear to only them, because I have kept the secrets faithfully. So yeah.
I don't even want to follow that. Hi, I'm Hannah. I wrote, my first book was Assistant to the Villain. It debuted last year. And my second book just came out in, August. Time is not real. Is it October already? Wow.
Maybe.
Wow.
I don't know.
Apprentice to the Villain is the second one. So Assistant to the Villain is basically like a very satirical, comedic rom-com type of story in a fairy tale world about a fantasy villain's office and sort of the mysteries that he and his sunshine assistant have to solve together. And they're totally not in love or into each other. He's not secretly obsessed with her at all. And the book I'm working on now is book 3 in the series. It has a title. You'll find out at some point. I love the gasp that followed. Fabulous. It only feeds me. I live off of spite.
That's just true of all fantasy writers, right?
Yes, true. Exactly.
So my very first true question here is, going back to the beginning, what is it that made you guys first want to become writers? And what has your journey been like from that to where you are now? Big question. Starting off with the big ones.
Well, I always like to say that I didn't want to be a writer. Writing came for me in the night. And, if I could be an accountant, I would. If I could do a job with health insurance, I probably would. I'd think about it. But
having been an accountant, I don't know if you actually want to go down that path.
I can't make that joke to you. Double major in English and accounting. I learned that tonight. My mom is a Filipino immigrant, so if I told her I was going to be an English major, I would have been laughed out of the house, So I studied urban planning and public policy. I have a master's in urban planning. Then I went to law school. Then I dropped out of law school and did some things for a while. I was a freelance graphic designer. I worked in commercial real estate. My very dim view of humanity comes from all of those things. I worked in retail briefly also. And then one day my psychiatrist didn't refill my pills.
This is starting to sound like a villain origin story, right?
It kind of is. I made it everybody else's problem. So then I discovered, the year was 2016, and I discovered fanfiction.net. And so I spent about 3 days just like completely insomniatic. I couldn't sleep at all. I started writing fan fiction. I was
Are
like,
we
you know
allowed
what?
to ask which fandom you were?
Yeah, I don't engage in this fandom anymore, but I was like, I've got some solid ideas about how to improve Harry Potter. I wrote an extremely mentally ill 4 million words of Hermione fan fiction.
My friend wanted me to tell you that she's read all of them.
Thank you. Thank you to your friend. I
you slayed.
guarantee people in this room found me from fan fiction, and they're gonna say it. They're gonna like whisper it to me, and I'm gonna be like, I know. Thank you to your friend. But yeah. So then I was like, you know what? I feel better when I'm being creative. Like this is my good brain. I have bipolar, so it was like, you know, this is what I'm meant to do. It's that feeling of falling in love. You know, like this is what I'm supposed to do, and fought a long time for that to be an actual thing that paid me any money. But it was worth it because it's like, this is the thing that makes me feel right. This is the closest thing to a purpose that I have ever experienced. And so I started self-publishing books when I couldn't get through the gatekeepers. And then I wrote this little book, my 9th self-published book, The Atlas 6, went viral. Tor picked it up. I actually got my first publishing deal for my young adult novel, My Mechanical Romance, which is why I have 2 different identities. And now here we are. Like I said, I made it everybody else's problem.
All right, Hannah, what's your villain origin story?
Oh, God. It started with my father. He's in the front row. I'm just kidding. Kind of. No. My parents were very big on telling us stories before bed. And I was corrected because I thought it was a beetle. It's actually just a bug, which is very general in my defense. But my dad would tell us a story about Larry, the bug, not beetle, that lived under our swing set, and I got to like contribute to Larry's adventures, and that got me really into storytelling. And I've always loved to tell stories. That's why I made up so much stuff when I was little. I didn't look at it like lying. It was make-believe. There's like videos of me on our fireplace at like 2, like telling Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, and my very patient mother was like, yes, I haven't heard this story for 100 times already. And then I really fell in love with writing, and actually, like now I tell this story. When I was younger, I thought it was sweet. Now it's kind of dark. In 3rd grade, we did like a writing assignment. Or it was like my first writing prompt in school. Like, you know those assignments you get in school where you have to like do a writing prompt. It was, we were learning about the Titanic. And yeah, it's already getting there, right? It was like a diary entry as one of the passengers. And my teacher said you could either do pre or post crash. Right? Like that was like a lot for a 3rd grader.
Maybe this teacher knew where this was going. What
so
a
I
weird
did the
thing
assignment,
to
and
do.
it was like my first thing in school that I was like really invested in, or like really was able. I have terrible attention issues. That was the one thing I was like really invested in. And then the following year, you'll see the pipeline very clearly to where I am now. We did another writing prompt project in 4th grade we read a children's book about the 3 little pigs, but this was from the wolf's perspective, and he wasn't actually trying to blow their house down. He just had a cold. Which I was like, that's so valid, and also how mean that they've been misrepresenting him all these years. So right then and there, I was like, I feel like the villains have a point, and sometimes they're just misunderstood. So we had to write a story and twist it so that the villain is actually the one in the right. So I wrote Snow White and the Evil Prince. I still have it. We still have it somewhere. But after that, like writing was like always the thing that made me the happiest. I nannied for many years, like from 15 till just last year. I love working with kids because they say the funniest things ever, and they're very uninhibited with their imaginations. And I am also uninhibited with my imagination. People are like, you get along so well with kids, and I'm like, we have the same brain. That's why. So yeah, I ended up. I always knew writing was the thing I wanted to do. And then during the pandemic, like most people, I found TikTok, and then I found Book Talk, and I started making my videos, writing on the side. And my book was actually born on TikTok, which is really cool. You can see it slowly become a book. Like a main character in the book is Becky. Becky was a name I yelled offhandedly in the first video. I was like, Becky, what do you know? You're in HR. And now Becky's like my favorite character ever. And yeah, and now I'm here with one of my favorite authors. It's weird.
Well, I'm very curious because you mentioned this. So did you do pre or post syncing of the Titanic?
Oh, I did pre. And you could write, again, weird, right? First, you could either be a first-class passenger or a third-class passenger. And I was like, this is very
This is a
elitist
lot
and
for
dark.
third graders.
I was 8. Just to put it in perspective. But yeah, I did pre-crash because I was like, this post-crash is a little morbid. Most people did post-crash, though, mind you. That
I
would
have
been
really strong opinions about Titanic, the film.
Do you?
Oh.
I do.
Say it.
Everyone tells me not to say them.
No, say them right now.
Like, everyone's like, stop telling people that. No, I don't think it's a love
No.
story because Kate Winslet says, I love you like 3 times, and Leonardo DiCaprio says it back 0 times.
Wait.
Yeah. And I was like, I think this guy just got laid on a boat.
He might be...
And then he dies for her.
I know, but he
you know
might
what
be,
it
like,
is?
acts of
It's a
service.
movie about the perils of capitalism.
Wait, she
Olivie,
says I
we
love you and
talked
he
about
doesn't
this.
say I love you?
It's just,
Wait, which one says I love you, him or her?
she says, of course she says I love you.
Wait, but he's acts of service. Like he showed her by like
That
freezing
boy
to death.
what is the service?
Dying.
He didn't want to do that. I mean, by this logic, his dick was the service.
I have never
I'm with
seen the
you.
Titanic, and this is the best description I could have asked for.
Literally, everyone is like, stop saying this in
No, I
public.
feel like in your defense, there were so many solutions to the door problem.
Yeah,
Everyone knows.
You know,
there was room for both of them. Move
Like,
over.
he was like, I'm
Get
just gonna
Katie
have a
Palmer.
fun time on this fancy boat.
Yeah,
And then
he had a fun time for a little bit.
And then he died in what seems like a class solidarity issue. Anyway, let's go. It's fine.
I cannot believe I've only asked really one question so far. All right, so my next question has to do, so basically something that I very quickly noticed about all of our books is that we all seem to really like writing about villainous characters.
It's true. We do.
So that is my next question. What is it that draws you to writing about morally gray or even just downright bad guys?
Oh, sure. Because I think I can fix them. I've been in therapy for it for years. Nothing's worked, so this was the plan B. No, I think I grew up watching a lot of the Disney movies, and they annoyingly made all the villains so fun and fabulous. Like Hades is so stupid funny for no reason. I'm like, he's so fun. He's like, he's a guy, and I'm like, you're slay. You're so funny. And I remember the Snow White scene, and I know that scene is scary, right? Like when she's turning into the old hag to give her the apple. I watched it like this. I want to be that. I want to do that.
In that case, society is the villain.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, why should
The
she
beauty
feel...
standard's the real
Right.
villain.
Why, the patriarchy is the problem. Why should she feel the need to be young all the time?
Yeah, that's so valid.
The beauty industry.
The beauty industry. That's actually the problem. I just think I like characters that, I think they're more interesting. I think characters that will blur the line between, or will go a little past the line. And I also think it's relatable because everybody's been the villain in somebody's story at some point in time.
Yes, yeah. I was just gonna be like, I'm an empath.
I mean, same.
I think there's something dull about the idea that there is good and there is bad, and that you just are in one of those categories, and it just is something that you are, and that there is no complexity to why you do certain things, and it makes for an underbaked story to not really explore the motivations of people. I have a very great curiosity for people. I see them in a dim light, but I still want to know why are they that way, and I think people are very, very interesting. And technically in the Atlas series, which is really what I think fits into this category of villains, is that there are no heroes and there are no villains, and the whole point is that I open with a character that could feel very much like you, so that I can show you this is how you can be capable of atrocity. This is how you become the villain. And I think there's just something fun about that. There's something interesting about playing with someone without I think casting something like inflexible morality, which is normally seen as a positive thing, as a weakness, is just an more interesting way to look at the world. But also law school was definitely an influence. Everyone that goes to law school is just the worst kind of person. I'm including myself in that. I can say things like that because I also went.
I love that. Oh my gosh. My best friend's a lawyer. I should not say that. Oh my gosh.
No, but it's true though.
Best friend would probably be valid.
It's true though, because you go through school, right? And you have to be the top of your class, and you just have to keep being the top of your class all the way up, and you kind of build in this idea that that you're better, that you're smarter, because you have to be. And then academia sloughs people away. Its job is to be you're not good enough. So
organic chemistry almost broke me.
Yeah.
It did.
It's designed to break you.
I dropped the class.
Okay.
I changed my major. I was a psych major. Later.
Well, that's important. That's important for the villains.
I don't like science or math. It's not that I don't like them. They don't like me.
I got 2 B's in college, and I'm really upset about one because it was in my beginning writing class. And so it was taught by an underpaid English doctoral student, and she pulled me aside one day and she's like, I feel like you don't take me seriously. And I was like, well, I super don't now.
You should send her a copy.
So she gave me a B. But I'm here now.
Send her a copy of one of your books.
I've always wanted to have a story like that.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that, but I was only 18. I didn't understand consequences. I thought that merit meant something.
I always thought the thing in college was, I started out writing children's books and then YA books, and that was not the vibe in the college creative writing classes. That was not the cool kids, if that's what you wanted to do. I think it's because mostly women do it.
Oh, yeah. Right. The whole thing. You're a woman. You must write for children. You must write romance. You must write love stories. And you must write for children.
That does kind of bring me on to my next question, though. I was going to ask about romance and fantasy. So, right now, we are seeing kind of the birth of this new genre that's happened over the past few years that people are calling romantasy. And the thing is that so many books are just kind of called romantasy. Yeah. It's so new and still being defined that a lot of things are kind of slapped with that label. So I'm curious, as people who write fantasy books, as people who write romance in their books, or even write romantasy, how do you kind of see this new genre? How do you see your books falling into it? And I don't know, what do you think of it? Do you like it?
Oh,
I see your books as being true romantasy.
I agree.
I think that I think romantasy is true. Sometimes it depends on the reader and what the reader is saying, because sometimes you'll read, my book's very slow burn tension. I like to torture people. Oh, they touched. It's not going to happen for 200 more pages. But to some people, that's not as romantic as characters really just going at it, really having a good time. Which again, so some people wouldn't consider that full romance. They would consider it a romantic side plot. But I look at my book as a romantasy because I'm the romance is a huge portion of the book. And then the fantasy stuff obviously matters too. But I think the romantasy definition, again, whoa, hello, sorry. It was shut up, stop talking. It's still being defined, I think, because it is so new and so many people have different opinions on what makes something romantasy and what makes it just a fantasy with romance in it. I think that as long as you're having fun, it doesn't really matter that much, honestly. With my books in particular, I think that a lot of the things that happen in the book happen around the romance. So that's what makes me feel like it's romantasy. I love romantasy. When I was reading fantasy growing up, my favorite parts of the books were always the romance. I'm such a romantic at heart. I can't help it. My parents are disgusting. They're like very in love and it's gross. And I couldn't help it. I just like love. I can't, between anyone, any love story gets me going. Like I love it so much. So, and when I got into fantasy reading, that was my favorite part of those books. So this was kind of just like an amalgamation of all of my favorite things. And I think a lot of these books have been like around for a long time. They're just like rising in popularity because people are putting that label on it. Oh, this is a romantasy, which is good because it helps bring people that like that particular genre to those books. So I think it's great. I think there shouldn't be a hard and fast definition. I think everybody defines it a little differently. I think that fantasy romance, I would think is something more fantasy centered with like a romantic side plot.
Yeah, to me, romantasy is fantasy world romance beats. So that's more kind of like more about the input than the output. That's just like you as the author, when you're doing romantasy, you are following the romance like narrative structure. And I think you can feel that as readers. And I think now also, I call it like the AO3ification of publishing. That's just like, there's a sense of identification of the tropes, this feeling of like the relationship arc being the real focus. So I don't write romantasy. I write slutty fantasy. And this is different because I highly, highly value the aspect of romance that means the happily ever after, that sense of closure, that real like, that epilogue feeling. That's not usually what I'm going for. That's not usually what my themes are. And yeah, so for me, I kind of always, I'm always starting from character first, and I'm always focusing on relationships. But I think as a reader, I really enjoy that feeling of catharsis. And I also enjoy the feeling of like, my mind is being changed as I read. Like I'm experiencing something that is making me really think and really question things. And so to me, that kind of quote unquote unsafe reading experience is valuable. That's just like, this book might hurt me. I enjoy that.
Is there a reason? Obviously, there are tons of different genre mashups across all of books and media. Is there a reason you think romantasy in particular either is very popular right now or just why it works so well as kind of a pairing?
I think if we're thinking of it like it, and I think you defined it perfectly, like romantasy follows romance beats and has that like closure at the end. It gives people that like just straight romance, like dragons. Like that's fabulous. It's just like all of that good stuff, but there's also magic and there's also fun. So it suspends your disbelief even more. I think it puts you even more into I think you're already feeling like a fantasy feel when you're reading a romance book because it's just like a different place with different people and it's like centering, like what women want, which is for some reason so wild to some people. It shouldn't be fantasy, but it feels like one. So like adding magic and stuff, I think like pulls you into it further. Yeah, I think that.
Yeah, and I think that as, we know how to recognize those romance beats across medium. So like a rom-com movie or TV show and a romantasy book, they have that same, we can recognize the pattern. And I think that matters, especially for like entry-level readers, casual readers, which is something that like, I've always been a reader, so I've always identified as someone who loves books, but that's obviously not the case for everyone. There like are people who just read a couple books a year and they're good. And so I think that's something I never thought about because being someone that I would just like go to the library and pick up like 15 books off the science fiction and fantasy shelves, read things out of order because it was what was available. I didn't even think about the fact that there are different appetites. And so I think romantasy is a great place for someone who's like, well, I love this kind of movie or I love this kind of TV show. And I've never thought that I've had the patience for a book. And so I think those kinds of books are really important. They make readers out of people. So.
Yeah. Something I also think about a lot, and you might be able to talk about this too as like another YA writer, is that, Twilight, when that came out, we were kind of exactly of the age group that Twilight was geared for at the time. Like Twilight created YA as it is today. There wasn't a separate shelf called YA before Twilight was published. And what was Twilight? It was a paranormal romance. And so I think there's this whole generation, especially of femme people, who grew up with YA as what it was, and who grew up with fantasy, who now have kind of graduated into older stories and have created this whole genre for themselves. that I just think really celebrates kind of where we all got our start in reading, which is something I really love about Romantasy. It feels like we created it, even though I know people of all ages obviously read it.
Oh, you're 100% right.
I'm older than that. I'd just like to point that out. I'm 35, so I passed the Twilight years.
Oh, you're too old. You think you're too old for Twilight?
Oh yeah, I was too old for Twilight. It came out when I was in college, I think.
There were people in their 30s reading Twilight at the
Well,
time.
but I was in college. College was specifically the time when I did not read for pleasure. Like, who had the time to read
it
for
was
pleasure?
like it was a period of your life.
That's what I love about Book Talk, is that this is the first time I've seen college students read. Like, I think the reason that new adult was not a thing that worked was because college students for a long time were not, like, there was no reading for fun. That there was a whole period of my life where I just didn't. And because it wasn't, Book Talk created something that was a community, that was like, you can do this with your friends. Like the concept of a book, reading sorry, I got worked up. I know. Yeah, no, it's like, calm down. Relax. But yeah, no, I think it's such a wonderful change that I think reading used to be a very isolating activity. It was like what the nerds did. I like walked around at lunch reading by myself. Like that's what I thought reading was. And so to see Book Talk be this thing that's this real celebration of we can all enjoy this book. And I think, my books, I think of them as being like group chat books. You talk to your friends about this. You speculate about what's going to happen next.
It's true. We've done it in a group chat.
That communal aspect of reading is a wonderful thing.
That's funny. It really leads into another question that I had. I'm going to skip ahead.
We're being
all right. This is going to be the last question then, I guess.
I'm sorry.
Gosh.
I really derailed us.
We could go
All
for
right.
hours.
I guess it's a decent question to be the finale question. So I did actually kind of want to talk a little bit about social media, because I think there's a lot of conversations I hear nowadays about like how people don't read anymore, which is kind of funny because more books are consumed nowadays than have ever been consumed before. So, you were saying that you think a lot of this has to do with social media in particular. Is that like kind of what you would attribute it to? And like, how do you see, both of your books and both of you have large social media presences and owe a lot of your careers to social media. Like, how do you work that into your career? Kind of how do you see that in the book world as it is nowadays?
I mean, so social media is the reason I'm sitting here. So I owe it a lot because for me, it was always just another way to be creative. Making those skits was just kind of like another escape. Like reading has always been an escape for me. Writing's always been an escape for me. Making funny skits that I could interact with people in my comment section about, that was another creative way to escape. And I was writing something else at the time, but I loved making these videos. I have a group chat there's 6 of us total. All my friends, I've met them. They're authors, writers, all people I met through TikTok. We see each other once a year. Now we see each other multiple times a year. We all live in different parts of the world. And they're like my closest friends. And it's one of those things where I'm like, sure, there's good and bad in everything. So there's definitely parts of social media that aren't great and aren't fabulous, but there are things that are great and are fabulous, and that's the connections you can make with readers, with friends, with other authors. I've conned my way into being friends with so many authors. It's fabulous. I just trick them all, and then I text them when I'm upset. No, but I do, like when I posted that first skit for Assistant to the Villain, I was just running around my college townhome screaming into a bathroom like there was a person in it, and it was just a wall and a toilet. I mean, it was the villain having a bad day.
That sounds a little like a prison cell, but
yeah. It did. I really should have decorated that bathroom more. It was really sad in there. But I kept they were like just as much of a joy as writing was. So I was able to, like my friend at one point when I was writing the book was like, God, your marketing's so good. And I was like, thanks. It was an accident. Because it wasn't on purpose. It ended up being like, I'm very lucky in the sense that when I make videos about my book, it still feels like when I was just doing it for fun. So I think in that way, social media can be a really great mecca for being creative and just a different platform in a different way. And it helped, get me exposure enough for an agent to reach out to me and be interested in my book, and even my publisher. So I'm very grateful to the community I've built on there. I sincerely don't think I would be sitting here without it. So there's definitely caveats, but I think that I've seen so much more good than I have anything else.
As someone who's watched a lot of your videos, I just do have to say, like, when you talk about how much you enjoy making them, it really comes through. Like you can tell how much fun you have and how much joy is in the videos, and I think that's what makes it really special.
I'm gonna go.
I'm also here because of social media, but I really don't like it. And I'm like, just please don't look at me. And you know, the way that the Atlas 6 went viral, I really had nothing to do with it. I've never been on TikTok. I don't have a TikTok. And I was really pregnant. I was like 7 months pregnant when it went viral on Twitter, and people were pirating my book. And I was like, I don't have time to cry today. I'm taking a lot of naps to just kind of make it through this time. And then I was giving birth when it went viral on TikTok. Like I was literally giving birth. Which like takes a while. FYI, it's like a couple of days. And like I got a message on Tumblr that was like, just so you know, this happened on TikTok. And I was like, oh my God, crazy. I'm gonna get the epidural now. But I love what social media is, what social media has done for books and for community. I think, you know, I can never talk about it without also mentioning that, you know, TikTok as an algorithm is flawed. It prioritizes white, conventionally attractive, thin faces, and it's definitely doing that on purpose. So, like, obviously, what makes a book talk book? It's easy to hate on that generally, to be like, oh, this is book talk, and have it mean one thing, when really there is a corner of book talk for everyone. That what book talk is what has always sold books in this industry, which is word of mouth. And the people who made the Atlas 6 go viral did it from a place of absolute passion, and that's the kind of thing that I feel very, very grateful for and also want no part in. You know, because it's just like, that is a wonderful thing that has nothing to do with me. Like, thank you so much for being that passionate about it, and for taking that to this medium that has obviously changed my life, and which allows me to write my little books and not go on TikTok myself. But I value it so much, and I like never ever let people talk shit on book talk, because I know what people are saying, you know, and it's got that like misogynistic tone to it, and it's like, you know, like it's like when people don't like cats.
That's so valid.
Right?
That is weird.
Yeah. I've never thought about it.
If you don't like cats,
All
I'm
right.
not sorry.
I've really grown into a respect for cats. I see what they're doing, and I get it.
Oh my gosh. I think we're about to get interrupted before we go on our cat
No,
bit.
please, interrupt me.
Let's have a big round of applause. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Relax.
All right, don't
God,
worry.
I think it was me.
That's okay. The questions are not over, but we are going to come to you, the audience, now to ask your questions. I need you to raise your hand high so I can see it, and I'll try and make it all the way around so that wherever you're sitting, you'll get a chance to ask a question. I ask that you wait till you get the mic and that you speak into the mic so that everybody else can hear the question. And here is our first question.
Hi. First, I just wanted to say congratulations on your engagement, Hannah.
Thank you. I was very surprised.
And then secondly, I just wanted to ask, what would you both say is the biggest struggle for upcoming writers writing their first drafts and trying to get published? Just in the whole writing process and the publishing process and editing, what do you think is the biggest struggle?
Big struggle.
I feel like there's multiple.
There are a lot of struggles.
There's lots of them.
Where do we? Yeah. Well, I always like to point out that there is not one single path to publishing. You don't have to be traditionally published. Certainly, if you're going to be self-published, you have to like running your own business. You have to really write for adults, because you can't really reach your audience. Like if you write for children, you can't reach them via self-publishing. You need to write for a genre that's like romance, fantasy, erotica, something where people are really accustomed to like doing large volume. But it can happen. It's definitely on the table. This is not a publishing industry where you have to go about it a certain way. So that's my trying to put a positive spin on it. Because it is super hard to break through the gatekeepers and to find someone who cares enough about your work to invest in you. And it's a long road. It's a lot of rejection. You have to be really comfortable with no. You have to become really comfortable with revision.
Really comfortable. settle in.
Yeah, like you
Read it
really have to
8
love it.
million times.
Yeah, assuming you do go the traditionally published route, you're going to do a few rounds of edits with your agent, and then you're going to do a few more rounds of structural revision with the editor, and then you're going to get, like, right when you're feeling good, the copy editor is going to come in and tell
ruin
you
your life. I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
that you're
They
like
help a lot.
stupid, actually.
They do make you feel stupid. Sometimes they'll highlight something and they're like, "Did you mean to put this here?" And I'm like, "That feels so passive aggressive. I didn't.
Yeah.
It was an accident. It was 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Leave me alone." I agree. I feel like I always say that too, because I have lots of friends that self-publish, and they are like my superheroes because they basically man their own ship and have to do everything themselves, like hiring a formatter, an editor, cover artist, promoting the book, getting the ISBN. There's so many like things that I don't even think about that they talk about.
Audio production.
Like all those things that I'm like, oh my God. And they're like, yeah, that's why I'm tired. And I'm like, oh my God, go to sleep.
Yeah, and you don't really, like, what happened with the Atlas 6 was an anomaly. You don't usually move 10,000 volumes of one book. You usually make your living off of, like, having a pipeline of multiple books. So that's why self-publishing, you have to come out with a lot of books relatively quickly. But there's a trade-off with creative control. I think we can all speak to this. Eventually, like, your editor will be like, you can no longer comment on the cover. This is the cover.
Yeah.
But those are publishing intricacies. Let's not get there first. First novel, you said?
I think when coming into publishing too, like a general answer is something people have said to me that I always agree with, and I think this is just a rule for life, is that like comparison is just so fruitless with anything, because I like, even like looking at how my book got to where it is, I started this as a skit series on TikTok. I was making little videos on my phone, just me and my phone, yelling like there was another person there. My brothers made fun of me so much. I had the last laugh on that one. I would be like, don't judge me while I'm screaming into this bathroom. And my older brother was like, I'm gonna.
Okay, we're over here. We've got,
okay,
got
let's
another question
Well,
from here.
that's all. The end.
Okay, here we go. One sec.
First, I just want to say thank you for coming. We're super excited. But my question is for Hannah. It is, I don't want spoilers, but I just have one question, because we are for the Justice for Kingsley Parade. Is he getting a body? Is he getting a body? That's all we want to know. That's it.
He has a body. It's little and green.
No. And if we not a body, are we getting an explanation where the sign is coming from? I'll take
You don't want to know.
Sounds like back to bottom.
I'm kidding. That was a joke. Yeah, you get. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. Let me think on it first. Okay. Yes. Okay. Everyone, put their phones down. No
This is
one's.
highly classified info right here.
I wrote a POV chapter yesterday. I'm not going to say whose point of view it was in. I will say that I was cackling the entire time and kicking my feet like this is I think I hit a new level of ridiculous. I called someone yesterday and I went, I hit a different level of ridiculous today with my writing, and I'm so proud of it.
Thank you. Okay, we're sticking over here. Raise your hand over there if you have a question so I can see you, and I'll come over next.
Hi. First of all, thank you for coming. Outside of like traditional like influences, like other authors, are there any like songwriters, like specific pieces of folklore that inspired you to write any of your books?
There's been so many. I mean, yeah. Actually, so my next book, the book that's coming out. I'm sorry. The book that's coming out next year, Gifted and Talented, it's being pitched as Succession with Magic, but I actually haven't seen beyond the pilot. It's because I watched the pilot and I was like, oh, I'm gonna love this, and then like never came back to it. That's on me. I had a baby. But it's strongly inspired by the Royal Tenenbaums. Like that is a movie I like imprinted on as a teen and affected me greatly. I would say Girl Dinner is very much in conversation with the Barbie movie, and the Barbie movie, The Best of Everything by Rona Jaff, Fleischman is in Trouble. I kind of was thinking about where does feminism go from here? Like, I feel like at the end of last year, we kind of all fell into this, like, let's celebrate the universal quality of girlhood. And I was like, what was really universal about girlhood, though? Was that ever really a thing? Have we created a mythology of what it is to be the girl? And so I wanted to address that. Certainly have used mythology a bunch of times. Januaries has a lot of Greek mythology references in it. I used aswangs, which are like Filipino vampires in Masters of Death. That was really fun because like non-Western vampires have way fewer rules. So like she could like walk around in the daytime and it was fine. I didn't have to make anything up about a ring or whatever. She just was a shapeshifter, and like, anyway, and yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's more things that I'm forgetting, but I'm a fairy tale girly. I'm one of those, like, Roshni Chokshi is also a fairy tale girly. You know, like, you can feel the influence. Ara Kwong does a ton of, like, mythology references in her stuff as well. Yeah, I'm one of those. I fit into that category.
I watched a lot of Shrek growing up. To the point where DVDs are not as much a thing anymore. But when I was little, they were huge. And my brothers and I literally memorized. You know when it would just, like, the title screen would pop up, the play movie, and the pigs would be like, play the movie, yeah. We say that all the time still. That, like, funny fairy tales, that was, like, what I grew up, like, really enjoying, like, fairy tales with, like, some quirk to it. I love The Princess Bride.
Irreverent. That's what I would use for your books too. Irreverent is the.
That is so nice. Somebody write that down. Does somebody film me that? Send it to me later. Yeah, The Princess Bride. Like, I love, like, a story that has something for everyone. I think that was, like, the emphasis in The Princess Bride. Like, at the beginning of the movie, the grandfather's, like, reading it to the grandson, and he's like, oh, is this a kissing book? Ew. But he ends up loving it because there's sword fighting, and there's friendship, and there's romance, and you end up falling in love with, like, all the bits and pieces of the story, even if that's not what you came for. And I love, love, love stories like that. So I think that was, like, what heavily influenced me into storytelling.
Sad that you just made DVDs seem old, though.
I know. Well, they're not. I bought a new car. There's no CD player in it. And there's side airbags. It's wild.
I think we're going to try to do another question here.
I think we are we're all the way over here. Are there going to be any questions up high? Raise your hand
There
if you
is
have
someone
one.
back here that I
Okay,
don't
all
know
right.
if you can see.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll start here.
Okay.
Hi. I'm really awkward. I'm really sorry. I might get red. I don't like speaking in public. But
You're doing great.
Neither do we.
I like it. I'm having a good time.
Me too.
I did have a question for the both of you. Well, three of you actually. But what would be the best piece of advice that you would give for someone who is having a writer's block as a new writer? Like, that's something that I personally struggle with a lot.
Also, congratulations on your engagement.
Oh, thanks. Wow, guys.
I had my 10-year wedding anniversary.
Yes, she had her 10. That's way bigger a deal. That's more of an accomplishment.
We're at different stages of life.
But that's way cooler.
Yeah, I know, it's nice, right? Love is real. It is. What was the question?
Writer's
How to get
block.
rid of it's going to be a cheesy answer, but I feel like going for a walk always helps me. I know that sounds cheesy, but I always think this because, like, I can always tell if I've been on social media too much when, like, my eye starts to twitch and I'm like, oh my God, put it down and go outside. And I know when they say touch grass, that's like a cliche now, but they mean it. Like, go outside and feel feel the ground.
It can't hurt.
Listen to the birds chirp. Look at the sky. It's still there, weirdly enough. And yeah, I think going for a walk and listening to music that makes me feel like really inspired. I listen to an ungodly amount of Taylor Swift. So I put that on and I walk, and that usually gets me going. But I think, like, watching something or reading something in the genre that you're writing in can always be good too.
From a craft perspective, if you're stuck, the problem is behind you. It's something you already wrote. You need to fix something before you can move forward, and you just have to let your, like, subconscious mind work it out. But also, if it's your first book, everything else about writing is so hard that you should be having fun. And if you're not having fun, skip forward to some other scene, write something else. Like, it'll be a nightmare when you go back and try to revise it, but whatever. Like, you should be having fun, because if you're not, what are you doing, right? This is art. You're making art. So if it doesn't feel like it's moving you in some way, then, like, don't waste your time, you know? Just do something else.
I love that.
Like,
Someone writing this down for later.
well, Masters of Death was my first book, and it was really written from technically in terms of chronology of when I wrote things. And I wrote it out of order because I was just like, I didn't know how to put a book together. When you're writing your first book, you don't know what you're doing, so you might as well lean into that and write the thing that is like speaking to your imagination at the time. You'll fix it. You'll figure it out.
How do you kick writer's block, Amanda?
So my usual way of doing it, I'm a big outliner. I love to outline my books before
wish I was
write
you.
them.
I cannot relate. No.
It's usually one or the other.
You're so cool.
But the reason I got into outlining isn't because I had a passion for doing all of that ahead of time, but it was that I never would finish my books. I would love the idea. I'd be so obsessed with it. I would write and write and write. And then I'd run out of steam, I would get some sort of block, or I would get another idea that was shinier and better and had yet to be stuck. And I personally found that outlining gave my future self, it held my hand through the entire draft. Doesn't mean that it was easy to come up with the outline, and I certainly encounter a lot of block during that process, but it made the drafting process a lot easier so that I didn't have to focus on solving problems. I could just write the scenes and just focus on the writing itself.
Thanks. Okay, we're going to have one last question, and it is right here in the back.
So this question is actually for Hannah. I'm asking for my mom because she's watching my baby right now.
That's so nice.
I gave her your first book to read on vacation. She came back and yelled at me.
I'm sorry.
And she is very, very upset to a point where she doesn't want to read your second book until she knows when the series is going to end. So is the third book the last book, or is there going to be more? How long do I need to keep my mom on the hook?
There's 3 books planned as of now, and that's all I'm allowed to say. I don't want to get 3. I'm going to Tom Holland this whole thing. Someone else start talking. Tell your mom I'm sorry. And it'll all be okay. I hope. We'll see. Oh, that's so nice. Honestly, people get mad at the end, and I do too. I have no agency here anymore. They don't listen to me. I got to the end and I was like, is that it? All right. People are going to be mad.
And that's it. Yes, that's a perfect ending. All right. 8 o'clock on the nose. Way to go. All right, just a couple quick announcements. This was wonderful, and we are going to continue it next door with the book signing. The book